Hello, everybody, and welcome to Kung Fu Art. This is our first meeting about figure drawing. Yay! So, today we're going to be talking about gesture. We'll be talking about form and balance, symmetry and asymmetry, repetition and timing, wrapping lines, the spine, center of gravity, rib cage, and the pelvis. So let's get into it. So gesture drawing is the foundation of everything you plan to accomplish to be able to draw the human form. In this stage, you're focused on communicating an idea to the viewer and distilling everything you see into only the essential qualities. The lines that are most important to use in showing the figure are the C curve and the straight line and the S curve. To develop your gesture drawing skills, we must learn to describe the parts of the body, these parts being the head, the spine, arms, pelvis, rib cage, and legs. Instead of measuring methodically the proportions of the figure, focus on the action and movement of the form first, and then establish the figure's parts from head to foot. Base proportions off what looks correct. If it doesn't look right, change it. Since this is the early stages of developing and completing a completed figure drawing, it's easy to change. This will ensure that your drawing will be dynamic and the figure's poses will be fluid. So first we're going to talk about form and balance. The most important thing to remember when drawing the human form is that it's all about balance. When you're looking at the side view of the skeleton, the head is suspended out over the rib cage by the forward angle of the neck. The neck and head are then balanced by the rib cage as it pushes at the opposite angle. You can see in red the illustration here how the rib cage is opposite the neck and the head. Okay. The pelvis then moves in the opposite tilt of the rib cage. And then, of course, the legs stabilize the body. The figure's balance between hard and soft forms, the head, the rib cage, and the pelvis, are all large areas of bone that are balanced between those softer areas of muscle and flesh. So first, let's talk about our line stuff. So when we're drawing the figure, we're going to use line that is symmetrical and asymmetrical. Using line that continually emphasizes visual ideas of balance and movement, or the C or S curve lines, right? Start by drawing symmetrical lines. You can see in the picture, the lines are directly next to each other, kind of facing each other. And you can draw them in different ways. This was just an example. And then try the asymmetrical lines. So you can see that they're a little bit off each other, but they're still kind of the same. As you draw, pay attention to how your eyes move between the lines. If you want to maintain movement of the eye of the viewer, the asymmetrical lines make your eye move faster and in more areas. So that's something that you want to focus on when you're drawing, using asymmetrical lines. Then we have repetition and timing. In addition to using symmetry and asymmetry, the quality of line, or the repetition and the timing of the lines, provoke visual eye movement. Drawing repeated curved lines, like the one in the picture, can direct the viewer's eye. The drawing itself pushes the viewer's eye to the upper right. Drawing timed lines that are curved and S-shaped lines shows flow and movement. The lines repeat and direct the viewer's eye to flow from the top to the bottom. When repeated lines of two or more curved C and S-shaped lines, and using timing can create additional movement in your drawing. Using these techniques in drawing the figure will enable you to express the structure of the figure, but also the dynamic movement and pose of the figure as well. So when drawing gesture, the human form, focus on the dynamic movement of the figure. The C and S-shaped lines describe the movement of the parts of the body. Include shapes of the head, the ribcage, and pelvis. This will show proportion, weight, and balance. Keep the head a simple sphere, the ribcage as an egg shape, and the pelvis as an oval on its side. So now you're going to apply these line techniques to the human form and practice drawing people in different poses and active movement. Here are some examples. I just found some photographs online and drew these different poses using those line techniques that we talked about. Then I added wrapped lines. Wrapping line is the next step in building your gesture drawing. Wrapping lines is when you draw curves that move across the form to indicate perspective. When drawing the form, pay attention to if the form is receding from or coming towards the viewer. Using wrap lines across the gesture to describe how the form is moving in space. Notice in those pictures how the wrap lines indicate separate spatial placement of each leg and arm. Think of wrap lines as a rubber band or a string that's wrapped around or tied around a form. Using lines that travel around a form surface will develop form and perspective. So you can see here in the legs, there's these C-shaped wrapped lines around the legs that go one direction because it's going away from you. And then the direction of the curve on the top of the leg is in the opposite direction because it's coming towards you. So now you're going to apply the wrapped line technique. Practice drawing tubular forms to show how the forms change direction spatially with the direction of the wrapped lines. So like this form here, you can see the inside of this tubular form and you can tell the direction that it's coming towards you, right? Because of the way that the lines are shaped. Now this one, the tube is going away from you because of the way that the lines are wrapped around the form. You see? So now we're going to talk about the spine. The spine organizes and balances the three major masses of the head, the rib cage, and the pelvis. After becoming familiar with the use of line and curve, consider those elements in relationship to the movements of the spine. The goal is to allow your mark making to communicate the natural design of the figure, or the S curves, right? So the S curve of the spine needs to be thought about dimensionally as it works between the three major masses. Always try to understand or see what the spine is doing. Most everything in the figure can be explained based on the spine's movement and structure. So you can see I drew some ideas of what the spine looked like. There's the line drawing here where it's very angular, but the top is where the neck is and the bottom triangle is where the pelvis is, okay? And then you can just draw a straight line or a curved S-shaped line to indicate the spine as well. But you want to think about it three-dimensionally, okay? You're thinking about the spine in tubular form, right? So you want to use those curved lines to give it that dimensionality. And then you add the three masses of the head, the rib cage, and the pelvis. And like this uses boxes, and we also use ovals. So a circle, an oval, and sort of a boxy oval that's on its side for the pelvis. So now we're going to talk about center of gravity. So manipulating the figure's center of gravity is essential to creating a dynamic and interesting pose. A common mistake when drawing the figure is keeping the three major masses of the head, ribcage, and pelvis balanced and straight. So that's that center figure here, right? It's balanced, it's straight, but it's kind of boring. Creating a dynamic and interesting pose requires creating tension with the figure's center of gravity. Practice drawing the three major masses and how they move around the center of gravity. Try the dramatic imbalance placement of the masses in relationship to the center of gravity. So you can see the two on the side are very dynamic and interesting poses, right? So what I did was I found where the head was supposed to be, the shoulders. I drew those lines and the tilt of the pelvis and the lines where the chest and or rib cage and of course the legs where they're supposed to be. So you have to think about the weight placement of the leg, where the weight is placed in based on the center of gravity. Okay. So in this first figure on the side here, the the right leg facing me is where the load bearing weight of this figure is. And of course, the opposite leg on the one on the far side is, and it's much more dramatic, of course, is where the weight is on that, in that figure. So then we have the rib cage and the pelvis. When placing the shapes of the rib cage and the pelvis, make sure that they're consistent with the spine and balance of the gesture. When drawing the rib cage and pelvis, look for the line of its tilt. Check the weight-bearing leg. When most of the weight is on one leg, it'll make the area of that bone in the pelvis to raise, right? And drop the other side. Draw that tilt and then place the shape on top. The drawings indicate options of shapes to use when drawing the rib cage, the pelvis, and various tilt options. Adding these shapes to your gesture drawings will build the structural foundation of the figure and enhance the perspective of the figure's form. So you can see I just did some sketches of the rib cage and the pelvis and the tilt of the rib cage, how it's facing you. So you can see like in this center piece here, the pelvis is kind of facing 3/4 in a way, not straight ahead. This one is tilted up. So try drawing these shapes like this in 3 dimensions with those curved lines to give them that dimension, okay? And you're going to add that to your action gestures. So that's your assignment. As you can see, that previous drawing, I've upgraded it, right? So I want you to practice the techniques of line, the symmetrical and the asymmetrical, the repetition and timing, just drawing the S and C curved lines. Repeat them. Try different timing when you're drawing them. Then I want you to find 3 photos of figures in different poses and practice drawing the figures using those line techniques and focus on the active movement of the figure, okay? Add wrapping lines to the forms after establishing that base gesture of the figure. Then I want you to practice drawing the spine and the 3 major masses of the head, rib cage, and pelvis, and practice drawing those forms based on a center of gravity using that tilt, okay? Which way does the rib cage tilt? Which way does the pelvis tilt? Then find 3 more photos of figures in different poses. Practice drawing the active movement of the gesture first, then with those line techniques, and then add the spine, the head, the rib cage, and pelvis around that center of gravity. Find your your weight-bearing leg. Then establish the movement of the structure of the figure. Add those wrapped lines and bring the perspective and form to your drawing. So just like the sketch that I finished here, I started out with just those basic lines of where the head, the rib cage, and the pelvis were located. You can still see them here in the drawing. You can see where I put the line here for the spine and the way that it acts within the figure. So you can still see that there in this drawing. And then I established where the shoulders went, right? And how that is tilted in the weight of the figure's pose. The figure is balanced on this one foot, okay? But it also has weight going towards the other direction in a triangle, towards that other foot. That's the way that the spine, the pelvis, and the head and neck work over top of that leg. And then I use the wrapped lines to show the form of the shape of the different parts of the body in order to give you that like kind of a little bit of muscular suggestion of how the figure is posed. All right. So thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the lesson and you go and try these exercises at home. Try to do that final figure drawing. If you need help, contact me, Sarah Taylor Glazer at norfolk.gov. You can also sign up for the live virtual class because we're going to be doing some practice after this. Or if you just have questions, email me. Visit www.sloverlibrary.com for more awesome programs like this, or view this lesson and others on Facebook at Slover Library Kung Fu Art, or at www.sloverlibrary.com under the Learn tab. All right, guys, have fun with this. Thanks so much and have a wonderful day.